Hi, it's Xavier and welcome to my bonsai retreat. And do you know what? Everyone here who watches my channel knows that I started my bonsai life with larch, in fact with these larches, and that I actually love them. I think really they are the best tree if you're a beginner. They're a best tree if you want age and bark, rugged looking stuff quickly, and they're also a great tree if you want to stay busy through the spring and summer and autumn, because you know what? I can be doing stuff on these 4 or 5 times in the single season, and I'll get great ramification and great satisfaction. And what I'm going to try and do is show you 3 different approaches for larches. Your basic beginner tree, which again has different requirements. Something that's well on its way to the bonsai journey, which again has slightly different pruning requirements. And then you've got some old forest contraption group here with a duck-billed or horn-billed dinosaur, and it too has different requirements for pruning, including the big one. What are we going to do when we start losing branches? What's that telling us?
There's something wrong with his ear.
So, if they're the sort of questions you're asking yourself or the sort of thing that you'd like to see, then hang around, because I guarantee we're going to have a lot of fun and we're going to see a lot of really interesting larches today. So, what have we got here? We've got two larches that I purchased as 2-year-old saplings a couple of years back. They've been in this pot now for probably 18 months, 12 months to 18 months. In fact, if you want to know exactly, the video up there shows exactly what I do when I've got brand new bare-rooted saplings. And this year I'm going to do very, very little because they're still young. They're still developing that root structure that I want. And the only way they're going to get that is if we leave all these lovely fronds and growth on. So what sort of pruning do I do with something like this, which really is purely in development? It'll either be in the ground or it'll be in a big wooden basket or whatever. All you'll be doing first of all, loads and loads of fertilizer. I'll stay on top of the weeds, because you don't want weeds taking that vital space that you want the roots to have. So this is what we've got. I'd say they're not bonsai, they're not even pre-bonsai, they are sticks in pots. So there's only one thing I really look at doing at this time in their development. So let's get in close and find out what. And simply, I resolve all conflicts. I want these branches to grow nice and thick, so I want them to keep growing out. What I don't want is right at the junctions here, is stuff like this. That's just wasting energy, that can be removed. So I will go around this, and I'll basically remove any of these things that clearly I don't want. I'm not even worried right now about ramification. All I want to do is avoid anywhere where junctions are more than 3. The next big thing we need to worry about is where we've got more than 3 or 4 around the trunk. So we've got one here, one here, one here, another one at the back. We've got another one quite close below it. So what we need to do is sort of resolve the confliction for these the cartwheel growths around the same point on a trunk. And the only way you can do that is to actually look at the tree and have a look and see the orientation of branches nearby, so that we can try and at least get a decent spread. And maybe there's 1 or 2 of you saying, yeah, but Zav, you haven't got the front yet, so how can you possibly decide which branches to remove? And yeah, there's some validity in that. And for me, and again, I haven't had any training, this is just how I approach this, so it's certainly not gospel in the world of bonsai. But for me, knowing I haven't got a front right now, all I'm looking at is what decent good branches are developing right now. I've got this lovely long one here. Chances are this is going to get removed, but for now I like the fact that it's feeding stuffing through here and encouraging girth and growth generally. Moving further up, this is all going to be rubbish. This is what we're looking at. So we've got this here, assuming that's gone. We've got this here. We've got a nice strong one in a straight direction that way, although this one has got some ramification already, but I'm not worried about ramification right now, so that could be a distraction. Right now, all we're looking at is where the branches are and if they look strong. We've got this nice one here. We've got this big long one here, which I'd be sort of tempted to keep because it's so thick and taking so much energy, and it's going a nice upward direction. You could wire it, and that could actually be a decent branch with some wire on it. let's look above it. I've got this nice strong one here. So we've got something going out that way. Potentially, I'm going to remove that already. Every part of that says, although it's a nice strong branch, I don't actually want it. So I'm going to remove it. So we've got this one, that one we keep. So I'll have one going off that way. This is too low. So if we look at anything around this point, the first one is either that one. We've got one on this side and this back one. If I kept this branch, then my front is probably going to be in here somewhere. I am going to remove this one here, which has got all this lovely ramification on it already.
Did that make sense to you?
So if we look at it now, we've got one here, we've got this one here, we've got something upwards. Don't want that. Go on then, put your hands up. Did you see it? Did you see the real clumsy thing I just did then, which has really destroyed this example? But I'm going to keep it because I'm going to show you what you do when you make a glaringly big mistake. I could absolutely kick myself. I use these great big cutters to just quickly remove this thing from up here. And for those of you who didn't see it, what I actually did is stripped half of this one. So the branch that I wanted is now gone. And that's because that was not the tool to be using. So yeah, you've made a big mistake like I have. Does it matter? It's still developing. It's a young tree. It can go so many different directions. So the principle I tried to describe there, without guffing up, was just make sure you've got branches coming out at regular points going around the circumference of the tree. You don't need to know where the front is then, because you've got branch placement in different places. What you are doing though is removing anywhere where you might have more than 3 from the same point. Last year when I did the initial cut on this, I've got that there. I can neaten that up. And you can start to get a feel for which way you might go with this. And we'll wait and see. As far as pruning, that's all I really need to do on that one. And that's it for your sort of younger nursery style stock that's, you know, certainly under 4 years old. You're still looking to get all the energy going into the roots. All you want to do is deconflict where you've got more than 2 branches coming from the same point. Really not much point making styling decisions. Everything's about making this stronger. The only difference to that is if you know you're going to wire, then while this is still supple, I'll be applying wire. Do I keep the long top growth going? Yes, because all that's going to do is continue to have nice life-giving sap and energy flowing up here, which is going to create greater tissue growth and make this trunk thicker. Okay, so now we're moving upwards. Our tree's a little bit older, and it's either a Yamadori dug up, which these little 2 were back in 2015. You know, another example is like this one. This is now, say, 5 or 6 years old. It's moved past the stage of actually just being a sapling developing. Now I've made decisions on putting it into a pot, which means as soon as I put it in a pot, I've slowed down all the growth immediately, which means in my head I've decided it's never going to be any taller than this. So it's going to be a little show-in, and what I need to do with something like this is decide my primary stroke secondary structure, which means I now need to be looking at all this massive growth, which can be really confusing, and decide where I want to start getting those new branches coming out, which is then going to lead on to the twigginess I want to my tertiary growth, which will happen in a few more years. So how do I approach it? Well, first of all, I'm not going to show you on this one because it's a bit wingy, a bit small. I've got great big clodhopper hands, so let's use something a bit bigger, which might make it easiug. So there we are, we've got this one. I'll give it a quick spin so you can get a feel for it. It's actually quite a nice little specimen, and as I say, dug up in the Welsh hillside, and I've put 2 trees together. I don't know whether it'll stay that way, but I quite like that as a composition. In terms of the trunk thickness, not a lot of taper, and that's one of the reasons I'm going to keep it quite squat and rely on the growth around it. With that in mind, I don't need thickening. I don't need great big sacrificial branches to do that for me. So really what I need to do is have a look. I've got branches here. Have a look and see the branches I've got and say, well, actually I'm quite happy with these branches. So now I need to start developing the branches that come off them, which is the secondary structure I'm looking for. To do that, I first of all need to cut all this long stuff, which sometimes you think, oh, I've got this lovely stuff, you know, maybe I can do things with it. Well, yeah, you could wire it, but if you're not wiring it, then you've got to be looking for your bud placements. And what do we do then? We go good old clip and grow. We look all the way back to the placements where we've got buds that we want new shoots to come from. We know the size of our trunk, we know the size of our primary branch coming off it, so perspective or relative positioning wise, we know how far back we have to go for it to look relatively real. Okay, so already all I've done is just literally cut anything that's going directly up, directly down, and shortened off by about a half any of those big long branches. I've left a few just to help you see exactly why I did it, but already if you didn't do anything more with that, you'd be tempted to leave that and say, do you know what, apart from a few branches here and there, that looks quite good, I might leave that, and that's my bonsai. And I think this is one of the first areas many of us, especially when we're starting, we fall into this. We see all this lovely green growth, we love it, we think it looks great, and it does. But it isn't going to bring your bonsai on any further, and what you'll find is that every year the growth comes out leggier and leggier, and you don't get that ramification of the branches that you actually want right in close, because ultimately the tree starts giving all its energy to the stuff that's further out. So you've got to go hard early. So looking here, we've got these two, looky here, yeah, we've got 3 branches here. They're the lowest point on the plane of the tree, so these are going to be your biggest and your longest and should be your thickest in proportion to everything else. But they don't need to be 6 feet long. What I'm looking for is, in comparison to the whole tree, where do I really want my first secondary branches to coming from? So all I do is I start counting back, and I know all this stuff I don't need. So I could have cut all this right back until I basically had those 4. If I know I'm not wiring, in other words, doing something like this to create 2 pad levels, which is one of your options, I will go all the way back and say I've got a bud there, I've got a bud in there, and I've got this bud here and this here. So initially, when I do my initial cut, I'll cut to those 3. What I want is those 2 will come out, but even that, I look at it and go, that's still too far away. So what I'll actually do is say, go hard, Sav, go hard. So now what I'm saying to the tree is I want their growth and I want their growth for my secondary. I'll look at this one here that is potentially going to go across the front, and already I've got a bud right in close there, and then I have to go all the way out here, which is over 1.5 centimeters. Don't want that, so I'll cut that off here. I want the growth from there to come out, so I get a little branch. This lowest branch this way, again all this growth, not wiring it so I don't need it. I'm looking, I've got something up here which could potentially be useful, but I've got to look at these. I've got one here, one there. Now I like that one, not as happy with that one, but underneath I've got one here. So I will in this case be a little bit more generous with myself, and I'll say maybe those 2 will work out. I don't like the bottom one, so I might have to just go a bit more length for now, cut there. So that's a bit longer than I wanted, but I need to see how this responds. Now I'm going to emphasize again, knowing that I won't be wiring this, which for most of my larch I don't wire. What you'll find I always end up doing is pretty well going along every single branch and taking it back to the closest 2 or maybe 3 buds to the primary branch, and then I'll let it grow and we'll see what it looks like in 6 weeks time. Now what often makes this so difficult is this situation. You've got so much greenery. You've got 1, 2, potentially 3, 4 branches all here, tightly packed with needle growth. It's very hard to see where these buds are coming from, and this is one of the reasons why it's important to do your first solid pruning in the late winter, very early spring, when the buds are just greening up, because this is very chaotic and it's very difficult to do anything about that. I think my front is actually going to be there with the tree coming towards us. So you swing it around, you can see what I mean. There is the option of having them away, and my pruning doesn't preclude that as an option, so you tell me whether you think the front might be better there. But what this does highlight is some of the things that you do start picking up at this stage when you've got a better idea, you front either one side or the other, is when you've got issues like this. You've got a branch coming up here, you've got a great big area here where there's nothing. Now that doesn't mean, oh, we're going to cut it off, but we have to make a personalised choice on it. Although it's a lovely nice thick branch, it's also, and that's another point, it's also thicker than some of the lower growth, which puts it out of proportion, and that's something when you're looking at your development, your lower branches should be the thickest, and then as you move up, they get thinner and thinner. I'm actually going to remove that upward growth. So let's get into the apex, because this is the easiest part. Once you've defined all the lower part, the truth is the apex is very, very simple. I'll say it again and again and again. I know I'm not going to be wiring, so I'm not going to be laying any of these down to create the shape that potentially you could. And yes, I could do that, but I'm going to be saying entirely to clip and grow. So by the time we get up to here, we want our buds to be literally the first set of buds. I'm going to be removing anything that is even remotely away from the profile. If you look in here, this branch there is going across. Let's get it right back to there. This one here, it's actually going upwards. I'm not sure it serves any purpose at all, and it's also quite a distance between that one and the first set of buds. So I'm actually going to make a decision on this one. It's also very, very coarse and ugly looking. Get rid of it. Do I need that length up there to be my first set of branches coming out here? Personal preference, but for me, no. I'll rely on the buds that are further back, which just leaves this great wonky thing here. Do I need length for any reason? Well, for a start, that's going upwards. I'm not going to be growing the tree from there, but I might be wanting to do my apex with that bud there coming across. So for now, I'm just going to cut it there, see how they develop. And that's the approach I will take to anything that's in this sort of age range and development range. I need to be getting those buds to form my secondary branches, and off those is where I'll have my final tertiary twigginess. So then we move the tree on further another 10 years. In actual truth, this one is over 20 years old, and I've got it in this weenie pot, but for a long time it was just in a great big black round plant pot, mainly because I didn't know what to do with it. We're set, we've got our secondary branches, and just so we're clear on what I mean by secondary, I'll show you now. Trunk, I know, Captain Obvious. That's my primary branch there, these ones going up here. They're the thickness I want, so I'm not doing anything more with this. So we've got this the secondary structure here, and in fact what you can see here is we've actually got 1, 2, 3 from the same point, so I'm actually going to have to remove one of these, which is one of the jobs we're going to do the pruning today. And then what I'm actually looking to do is to get my tertiary work now. So I've got extra branches coming off these secondary ones, and these are my sort of tertiary branches. And that's what we're working on with the tree this old. So this is the furthest that the branch is coming out. If I look at this lower pad here, which is what I was doing, this is an example where although I've got 3 coming from that point, this got wired 2 years ago, so that I've actually got an additional pad lower down. So in this case I'm actually going to leave the 3, and I may actually in the winter wire that further down. The larch will have a fairly sort of triangular-ish lozenge shaped thing to it, so you try to create your pads like that. So again, this lowest one here, 1, 2, 3, I'm going to cut all the way back to that one. Here I need a branch that's in closer, so I'll go to there. And again, you see we've got this big branch here, loads and loads of good growth on it, but it's directing all its energy over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 plus shoots. We don't need that. We've got our secondary branch coming out. Now we need tertiary. And really we only need 1, 2, probably 3 buds. So that's what I'll do. So I'll cut all that back to there and then remove all of that. And I'm going to say at this point, I've done larch cuttings. I do them every year, and my success rate out of the probably hundreds that I've done, 2. Tried all the different methods. I find them the hardest to strike, and I think I've got that sort of opinion from quite a few other people too. And this is also the other ideal opportunity to have a look here. Very, very small pot. It's been in this for 2-3 years. I can feel it's in there quite solid. This is definitely down for a repot, and I'll probably put it into something a little bit bigger. Believe it or not, do you believe it? There's a rock under there. I doubt that I've done a proper root on rock on it, but it'd be interesting to see what that looks like as well. So yeah, so also we'll do the cleanup work around there, toothbrush to get all this moss off. because what we don't want is those roots to rot. And again, this is what I love about larch. Sure, this is 24, 25 years old, but that bark, just wonderful. And you can get that effect with a lot younger material. So I'll clean all that up, get the moss off the top here, then put a load of biogold on it as well. And then I suppose we get to this example, which was the one you saw at the beginning. Whether you like it or not, it's in its finished format as a sort of little spinny. This is going to be subject to a massive big project where I'm going to do a big larch forest with quite a number of my sort of 20-plus-year-old larch trees, interlace them with some of the 8, 9, 10-year-old larches, and try and create a credible larch forest. Hopefully I'll get some help with that. So what we actually need to look at when we've got stuff like this, as far as we're concerned it's done, we're now looking at the future. You know, straight away, I've got this branch here which died. Now, one of the reasons it died, the roots are probably so root bound in this pot, it's been 4 or 5 years since I repotted it. That needs to happen. So the tree is starting to shed stuff that it can no longer support. So we go around and these sort of things, I'm looking at it. I'll also notice that unlike the other ones where we had lots of extensions, we've practically got no extensions going around this at all. What we can do is just remove a few tips, just to bring the line back in a little bit. But what I'm actually going to be looking for is the future branches for this tree. I need to grow some new stuff because that branch back wherever it was here died off. I'm not going to gene it or anything. So I need to probably wire and then create replacements from what I've got here. So in terms of how I can advise you best, well really all I can say to you is you look and think, well, what could, if I wire a branch down, these could be the potential new branch points. I've got nothing closer in, so I can't build from there. What you might do is say, right, well, I'm actually going to remove all of this and start trying to build new growth from what is the buds that are closest into your tree. That's going to be personal to you, but that's the sort of pruning I'll be looking to do with this, is where can I rebuild this from with the existing growth I've got. Well, as I've been going around, I finally found a way to point out what I mean by rebuilding from much further back. So say all this lot was dying off and I'm looking for the replacements. If we look in here, I've got this little lower branch here, and there's just one bud on it and this one here. Now the truth is, what I will do, so I remove this outward one because it's going to be going the wrong place, but potentially this whole new branch structure can be built from this one and could end up replacing this. So again, if we look in here, it's the best way, if we look in here, we've actually got lots of little buds really close in. So if I want to rebuild, I could actually remove all this, with a view that I'm going to be rebuilding based on this new stuff here. But really, that's all I need to do with that. You've always got to check the upper soil, and you can see this was all Akadama based. It's getting very, very crumbly. The task for next February is most definitely this repot, and that's why this is progressively getting weaker. There's just no space in there. Hopefully that's a good sort of broad spectrum run through of how I prune my larch from a beginner's tree, sort of 3-4 years old, where you're still trying to pump and promote growth, then to a bit more complex work where you've got your basically your trunk and your primary structure, and now you're looking at a tree where you want to try and start developing some of those side branches and the importance of where you prune there. Then when you get to the much older trees, starting to look at places where you can find your branch replacements, and then it's basically maintenance and care of the tree. Always remembering to keep an eye on the roots, because these things are absolute monsters when it comes to root growth. So we all know the old man, and believe it or not, I pruned this 2-3 weeks ago, and already we've got loads of this growth here coming. And in this one, again, I'm happy with where this tree is. So really all I've got to do now is check my buds, and as you've seen in previous videos I do on larch, you get these lots of little light brown buds. It's a finished tree. I don't want any great internodal distance up here, so There are no buds anywhere until here, so I'm going to go all the way back to the base, cut to there, and there are 2 buds right at the base there which I'll be looking for further ramification from. If you look here, hopefully you'll be able to see there's a bud there, and on the other side there's also a bud. That's what you're looking for. Just here there's a light brown bud there, and also one on the other side. So I will cut back to there. There's a brown bud there, and then another one there. So slicing in between so we don't cut the needles, cut back to there. So I'm going to continue to work around this one and go hunting for those little micro buds. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, obviously a big like, and I really would appreciate if you do have the ability to share it on different social media sites. That really helps me because it tells the algorithm, Mr. Algorithm, that perhaps I'm doing something that people like. In terms of the greater detail on finding what those little buds look like, it's covered in loads of videos, but do you know what? I have got a really expert video showing you exactly what those buds look like, exactly how I cut. It's even pretty easy to see. So I'll direct you to that video if you're really interested in a really in-depth, detailed work on how I get the best from my Japanese larch. So all that's left to say is enjoy your weekend, enjoy your bonsai. Happy bonsai and God bless. Cheers.